What happens when a key voice tied to USA basketball selection is exposed contradicting herself about Caitlin Clark and Indiana Fever fans on her own podcast? Sue Bird appeared confident, framing Clark's rapidly growing fan base as toxic, quietly agreeing as guests took shots at millions of new WNBA viewers, then reinforcing those claims afterward. But she overlooked one crucial detail. The microphones were on, and the footage exists. Now there's recorded evidence raising serious questions about impartiality from someone expected to remain objective in national team discussions. This isn't about a single comment. It's about whether this mindset has been shaping decisions behind the scenes for far longer than anyone realized. So the real question isn't if a line was crossed, but how often it's been crossed. Do you trust Sue Bird to be fair when it comes to Team USA selections? Sound off in the comments.
For a large group of people, mostly that exist online, it wasn't enough, love a player, love Caitlin, love whoever you want to love. But it was simultaneously they had to then say that every player that ever came before was trash.
No. That is not correct. That's not a thing.
For a loud segment of the online crowd, appreciation wasn't enough. It wasn't simply about supporting a player, supporting Caitlin or anyone else. They felt the need to tear down everyone who came before her to elevate their favorite. And that's where it crosses the line. You don't build greatness by erasing history or dismissing the athletes who laid the foundation. That narrative is flawed, unfair, and flat out wrong. Celebrating the present doesn't require disrespecting the past, and pretending otherwise only weakens the conversation instead of strengthening it.
During the WNBA this season, I feel like we sort of had one of those particular growing pains where it's like some of the people that are coming in and watching the sport and are fans of the sport feel like maybe they're there for a weird reason. And now they've found sort of maybe one player to hyper-fixate on that they feel stands at odds with what a WNBA player is in their minds. And they passionately love that player in a way that actually just feels like it's hate being disguised as love that they want to have against the rest of the...
Sue Bird stepped into what looked like just another standard podcast moment on A Touch More with Megan Rapinoe and Katie Nolan. The kind of setting she's navigated effortlessly for years. Cameras were on, the vibe was casual, and she appeared comfortable discussing women's basketball like a seasoned spokesperson. But few anticipated that this conversation would quietly expose her real perspective on Caitlin Clark and the massive wave of fans drawn to the WNBA by the Iowa standout. It started predictably. League growth, rising attendance, fresh energy in the arena, safe, familiar ground. Bird spoke smoothly about viewership spikes and expanding interest, sounding every bit like a polished ambassador for the sport. Her delivery stayed calm and controlled, reinforcing the idea that new attention was a positive force, at least on the surface, as the discussion moved forward without anyone suspecting where it was actually headed.
And we sort of had this moment where the rest of the fans had to go like, you paid the same money for your ticket, and you being here is also helpful to the sport. And that's a really difficult thing to do. They had no sort of reverence for the fact that, like, buddy, this conversation's been going on without you for years and years and years. And now you come in here and just think that you can, because you love this one player, and this one player is very good. She's very, very good. And like, I would love to just openly love them. Those are the types of moments that as a women's sports fan, I like really bristle against, where I'm just like, I hate that we have to go through that.
Then Katie Nolan steered the conversation straight toward Caitlin Clark's fan base, framing them as a problem and implying they showed little respect for WNBA history or the players who built the league. The tone in the room shifted immediately, and Sue Bird's response spoke volumes. As Nolan pressed forward, Bird nodded along repeatedly, her expression signaling clear agreement as the criticism escalated. There was no discomfort, no pushback, only visible approval as Clark's supporters were painted as uninformed and dismissive of the past. This wasn't passive listening, it was active endorsement. Eventually, Bird jumped in herself, arguing that for a large online segment, simply supporting a favorite player wasn't enough. They felt compelled to diminish everyone who came before. In that moment, Bird moved from observer to participant, openly reinforcing a narrative that lumped millions of new fans who helped drive unprecedented attention to the league, into a single, negative caricature.
I truly did not love that conversation. I don't know what that conversation adds to women's basketball, to the growth of women's basketball. I don't know why we're still bringing up a toxic fan base. I thought it was so condescending to say that so many fans are just latching on to Caitlin Clark for reasons other than the basketball. And that is something that we just continue to see. And it was also crazy because Katie Nolan at the end of this whole bit, she was like, yeah, I don't really watch that many games, but I'm keeping tabs on it. And it's like, that's the reason you had the take that you did. The reason that you had the take that you did is because you're not watching the games. You're not watching what's going on. You're not going to the games. And you clearly said that. You said, I'm a casual fan. I don't really watch the games, but I keep tabs on what's going on.
The contradiction is impossible to ignore once you remember Sue Bird's official role as USA Basketball's managing director, a position built on fairness and objectivity in evaluating national team talent. Yet there she was, on camera, openly criticizing the fan base tied to the league's most transformative modern star. Throughout the segment, Bird's body language told a story words couldn't hide, leaning in as the criticism sharpened, hands moving more emphatically, energy rising as she reinforced her stance. This wasn't a spontaneous reaction or a careless slip. It carried the weight of a perspective she had clearly been holding onto. Every approving nod, every knowing smile, every moment of agreement painted a picture of frustration aimed not just at fans, but at the scale of Caitlin Clark's impact. Bird appeared convinced she was speaking freely in a comfortable environment, but the cameras documented it all. What was meant to be casual conversation instead became recorded evidence of bias from someone entrusted to remain neutral when decisions about Clark's international basketball future are on the line.
I can't believe that we're still doing this. Really. There is this seeming desire to be able to wish or will other players into Caitlin Clark's level of popularity. And that is not something you can just make happen. You can't say
Interview
it
5.
and make it the case.
Sue Bird's sharp shift toward Caitlin Clark makes more sense when you trace it back to her college basketball foundation. She graduated from UConn in 2002 with 2 national titles, and that legacy clearly shaped not just how she views the game, but which players she believes deserve the spotlight. That context matters, especially because the very same podcast where Bird criticized Clark's fan base also featured her fiercely defending Paige Bueckers. She went out of her way to argue that Bueckers wasn't receiving nearly enough media attention, pushing her case with urgency and conviction. The contrast was striking. The skepticism and dismissive tone reserved for Clark's supporters vanished entirely. In its place was warmth, excitement, and a protective edge when discussing the UConn star. It revealed a clear double standard, one rooted not in performance alone, but in familiarity, loyalty, and where a player fits within Bird's basketball worldview.
Person who was like, all this stuff was happening before any of you got here. And it's like, okay, and it was millions of less people talking about the WNBA before the new fans got here. So to single out, once again, like I said, in 2025, to target a group of fans felt like was 6. Very condescending.
Sue Bird went as far as citing a specific figure, claiming Paige Bueckers receives only about 16% of the media attention Caitlin Clark gets, presenting it as a serious imbalance that urgently needed fixing. The frustration in her voice made it clear this wasn't a passing thought, but a long-held grievance. And that's where the pattern becomes obvious. In one breath, she dismisses and criticizes the fan base surrounding the player who sparked historic interest in women's basketball, and in the next, she pivots to elevating a UConn product she believes deserves equal spotlight. What never enters the conversation is why that attention exists in the first place. Clark didn't receive it by accident. She earned it through record-breaking performances and moments that pulled millions of new viewers into the sport. When you strip it down, Bird's argument collapses under its own weight. She frames earned popularity as excess, while advocating for manufactured balance elsewhere. This isn't a discussion about fairness or growth. It's a clear attempt to leverage influence to promote familiar loyalties, while minimizing the impact of the game's most powerful modern catalyst.
It's this weird thing in the WNBA space, and specifically in WNBA media. It's like you can trash Caitlin Clark as much as you want to, and you can't even push back on it. You can say whatever you want about her. You can say whatever you want about her fans, but you can't push back because, like, oh, they're right. There is a small section of fans
Interview 7.
who aren't really that great.
The UConn loyalty extends beyond just sentiment. Sue Bird now holds significant power as USA Basketball's managing director, giving her direct influence over national team roster decisions. She's essentially using that position to publicly campaign for players from her alma mater, while simultaneously undermining the league's biggest star. Sue Bird suggests that media outlets should redistribute their coverage to give backers more attention. She never acknowledges that Clark drew the coverage by delivering performances that captivated audiences nationwide. Sue Bird treats media attention like it should be divided equally rather than earned through exceptional play and fan engagement. The conflict of interest becomes impossible to ignore. The person responsible for evaluating players for Team USA is publicly advocating against the player who brought more attention to women's basketball than anyone in recent memory. Sue Bird's UConn bias isn't just showing, it's driving her decision-making process in ways that could affect Clark's international career opportunities. Sue Bird's comments reveal someone who views Clark's success as a threat to the UConn basketball legacy rather than a positive development for women's sports overall.
Sports fans are allowed to want to consume any particular player and or team and or franchise and or league that they want to. Okay? Now, what's hilarious is in all sports fandoms, I mean, you've got fans out there that think Josh Allen and Tom Brady are trash. Those fans exist, right? Here's the thing. Nobody thought the players that came before them were trash. No fans came into this league and thought that.
Sue Bird labeled Caitlin Clark supporters as toxic and damaging to women's basketball. But the numbers completely dismantle that narrative. Attendance nearly doubled during Clark's rookie season, with Indiana Fever games exploding from crowds of a few thousand into sold-out arenas packed with more than 17,000 fans. That surge wasn't driven by online noise or bad actors. It was families, parents, and young girls filling seats, wearing Clark jerseys, celebrating every deep shot, and learning the names of her teammates like Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, Sophie Cunningham, and Aaliyah Boston, all stars whose visibility grew alongside Clark's rise. The television data is even more decisive. Clark's games consistently topped 1 million viewers, while most WNBA broadcasts historically struggled to reach a fraction of that audience. Merchandise sales followed the same pattern, with jersey demand reaching levels the league had never experienced. These aren't the actions of a hostile fan base. They're the unmistakable signs of genuine growth, connection, and excitement. The evidence doesn't just challenge Bird's claims, it flatly disproves them, revealing a wave of support that expanded the sport rather than harmed it.
And to go out there, you're the what, managing director or something of USA Basketball? It is frightening to me that you are going to make decisions potentially about who's representing our country in Team USA. All because you don't like the fact that we don't want to consume
Interview 9.
Your agenda.
Social media lit up with young girls sharing videos of themselves practicing Clark's signature shots from beyond the arc, while parents posted clips of kids dribbling in driveways wearing number 22 Fever jerseys. Yet somehow, Sue Bird frames this grassroots energy as a threat rather than the sport's biggest blessing in decades. The reality of Fever Games tells a completely different story. Multi-generational families fill the stands. Grandmothers bring granddaughters to see Clark live. And young boys start asking about other WNBA teams after watching her dominate. Clark didn't just entertain. She transformed the league's economics. Ticket sales skyrocketed, merchandise flew off shelves, TV ratings surged past 1 million viewers per game, and sponsorships poured in. In one season, she generated more revenue than most players do over entire careers. Despite all this, Bird cast this unprecedented growth as a problem, treating Clark's historic impact on women's basketball as if it were something to contain rather than celebrate.
Do you know how many NBA fans only watched Michael Jordan? Only watched Magic Johnson, only watched Larry Bird? That was a thing. Even when I was a huge NBA fan, do you think I was going out of my way to watch Sacramento
Interview
Kings
10.
games?
Sue Bird claims Clark's fans disrespect basketball history, yet the data tells a completely different story. Most new viewers actively dive into the league, researching past legends like Diana Taurasi and current stars like Aya Wilson, expanding their knowledge rather than ignoring the game's heritage. The contrast between Bird's record and Clark's impact is impossible to ignore. Throughout her career, Bird never generated this level of mainstream attention, never consistently filled arenas, never drew millions of viewers to regular season games, and never inspired a generation of young girls to pick up basketballs and dream of playing professionally. Every measurable metric, attendance, TV ratings, merchandise sales, social media engagement, and economic growth, skyrocketed thanks to Clark's presence. Bird's podcast comments reveal the truth. They aren't about protecting the sport, but masking jealousy as concern, dismissing the player who single-handedly transformed the WNBA into a national spectacle.
They continue to want to tell fans how to be fans. And I got to be honest, at this point, you're not going to convince me there's not an anti-Caitlin Clark bias going on with people like Sue Bird now. Sorry, Sue Bird. Congratulations. You just put yourself in there. And now,
Interview
nobody's
11.
going to trust you.
Sue Bird's podcast remarks create a serious complication for Clark's future with Team USA. As managing director of USA Basketball, Bird holds direct sway over roster decisions for the 2026 FIBA Women's World Cup and the 2028 Olympics, meaning Clark's path to representing her country runs straight through someone who publicly labeled her fan base as toxic and problematic. The timing makes the bias even more alarming. Major international competitions are approaching, and roster choices will be made within the next 2 years. These weren't idle comments from a former player. They came while Bird actively occupies a position that could determine whether Clark ever dons a USA jersey again. Her influence extends beyond her own vote. Other USA Basketball officials take cues from their managing director. Seeing Bird criticize Clark's supporters while championing UConn players like Paige Buchers could easily make them question whether selecting Clark introduces unwanted controversy, raising the stakes for the league's brightest modern star.